Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikki Sussdorf, and I am the program director here at Leadership Toledo. Thank you so very much for joining us for the first community leadership series of 2022. I hope everybody had a lovely holiday season and a happy new year. We would like to thank First Energy for generously sponsoring this community leadership series and giving us the opportunity to bring forward conversations that you all want to hear about. Today, we are so excited to have Joe Napoli with us. I'm going to go ahead and read his bio for everybody. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Joe graduated from St. John's University in New York. Upon graduation, he joined Manufacturers Hanover Trust in New York City. Joe's nearly 30-year career in sports began in Canton, Ohio with the Canton Indians. In the early 90s, he moved to Toledo to work for the Toledo Mud Hens before spending several years working for the Chicago Bulls and Detroit Tigers. Joe returned to Toledo to embark on the development of Fifth Third Field in downtown Toledo. Years later, a second opportunity presented itself and he became part of the development team for the Toledo Walleye and Huntington Center. In 2012, the Hens initiated efforts to begin the downtown Toledo redevelopment of 3 historic buildings and park space, which is now known as Hensville. According to Nielsen Research, the Hens and Walleye continue to rank among the top 10 most popular franchises in minor and major league sports. Joe is a board member of several organizations in Toledo, including the Toledo Museum of Art, Toledo Symphony, Connect Toledo, LISC, Destination Toledo, the Toledo Metro Parks Foundation, and the Toledo Police Foundation. That's a lot of organizations. Joe met his wife Annette in Toledo during his first stint with the Mud Hens. Annette and Joe love raising their 5 children here in Toledo. So that was a lot of background on you there, Joe, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. So we've got, 2 or 3 hours here to spend on
only we did.
we have a wonderful list of questions here that probably 25, 30 questions. And one of the things that was suggested was really to make it personal, interactive, and I'm going to try to do that. So I guess beginning with the personal touch, one of the questions is, why do we do what we do? And what I mean by that is, the question is, personally, why do you want to be part of the Toledo Renaissance, or what motivates you to do the things that you do? Well, you turn back the clock to 35 years ago, and I had just taken a job at Manufacturers Hanover Trust, one of the money center banks in New York City. And the job, I was on the fast track, was it part of their training program, really had a terrific future ahead of myself. Started to really question the choice. And there's a book with a silly title called What Color is Your Parachute? And started reading through that book, and it's about career counseling and perspective. And it asks questions like, what do you have to contribute to the world? What can you do that's bigger than yourself? And these philosophical questions that really cause you to reflect on what is it that you want out of life. And on top of that, being Italian and being Catholic, you have this enormous guilt having a Catholic background and an Italian mother. So you say, well, how do you combine all of these things with the skill sets that you need to be successful in the career? And I started to look at it very differently than I did from when I graduated from St. John's. And lo and behold, said, there's an opportunity out there to work in sports and entertainment, and more importantly, create wonderful memories for people that experience these events socially with their friends, their relatives, their family, their coworkers, their clients. And think about that for a moment. You know, basically, my job, the Mud Hens and the Walleye in Hensville, is all about creating memorable experiences. So one of the things related to the Q&A today is, if you'd like to type in some of your most memorable experiences at the Hens, Walleye in Hensville, it'll be fascinating for us to get some feedback from the group as to what motivates you to enjoy the things that we provide. And what we have found, we're steeped in research and data as an organization. And what we find is, for every person that comes out to experience Winterfest, as an example, or a Mud Hens game, or a Walleye game, Hensville, they all come motivated from different perspectives. And it's typically friends and relatives and bonding experiences with family members and friends and clients and coworkers that really drives it. So it might be, I saw the teddy bear toss just popped up. It might be the teddy bear toss to experiencing Harry Potter night, or Star Wars themed nights, or bringing your pet to the ballpark or the arena, to Fifth Third Field and Huntington Center. So that's one perspective. Some of the questions were personal, around organizational leadership, downtown development. Some of these will blend together as I cover them, but I'll hit a couple here. So what is our vision for downtown Toledo? Why is there a passion behind that development? And what's happened over the last decade is there's this coalescence of business and community leaders in the Toledo region that have said, look, how do we make our community a terrific place to live, a terrific place to work? And how do we do things that encourage all age groups to embrace our community? So we broke ground on Fifth Third Field back in 2000. We built Huntington Center in 2009. The Metro Parks have built two Metro Parks in downtown Toledo, on the west side and the east side. And then they're going to take that development and do both sides of the river. So think of downtown Toledo in terms of almost 5 miles of riverfront being developed in a way that really embraces the river. And that was one of the questions. What are the things that we need to capitalize on as a community? And it's definitely the river, access to the Maumee River, access to Lake Erie. It's unique. Many communities would love to have the access to resources that we do. And then the 13,000 acres of Metro Park in our community, that is really second to none. When you take those experiences, and then all of the wonderful attractions that we have in town, the wonderful school systems that we have, the ability really to enjoy your family and your friends on a regular basis, is outstanding. And I'll share a couple of comments on that. Typically what happens in our community is people take a job in Toledo thinking that it's a jumping off point to something bigger and better. So they get recruited to Toledo and they're skeptical. They move here, they fall in love with it because you have affordable housing, wonderful communities, wonderful neighborhoods, terrific school systems. And the next thing you know, they get promoted out of the community and they don't want to go. And those are some of the things that we try to capitalize on through our collective collaborative efforts. And really what it's a testament to Leadership Toledo that they encourage these conversations and this type of coordinated effort and collaboration to encourage people to call Toledo and the Toledo region home. So that's the motivation that goes back to that original question. What can you do that's bigger than yourself, that's a contribution to community, that makes a difference? Some real interesting questions here. So there's one here about a standout career experience that benefited both personally and professionally. And I covered that already. That was really being on the fast track at a well-respected bank in New York City and coming to realize that I really didn't have a love affair or a passion for what I was doing. And people always talk about that. Do you pursue something that you love? Do you pursue something that you have a passion for? And then if you do that, what happens is you become so good at it because you love it and you have a passion for it that 10 years fly by, your 20s into your early to mid 30s, or even mid 20s to your early 40s. You spend time doing something that you love, you end up doing it well, and then your career begins to take care of itself. That doesn't happen overnight. That takes time. It's okay to stumble along the way and maybe make some mistakes along the way as well, because that's all natural and all normal and all part of the journey. Let's see. Oh, the
So
most
you've had a lot
important.
of
Yeah.
good responses to favorite memories at Mud Hens and Walleye here.
Are those in the chat?
They're in the chat.
Yeah. Oh,
yes.
yeah. Yep.
And these are all things, what I'm noticing is they're all things kind of outside of the game itself.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
These are all different opportunities.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. There's some fun ones here. Everyone has access to those. They can scroll through those, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that really hits home because everything from the scout sleepovers to the opportunity to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," those are things that have long-lasting impact and are memorable for people. We've got some funny stories about scout sleepovers and what the dads attempt to do during the scout sleepovers that we won't share here. But many of these are, these are great fun. So what is one of the most important lessons learned as a young professional? You can never have enough mentors. So invest time and effort in people that you respect and that you also, when I say respect, also people who have perspectives and opinions that are different than yours. That makes you more well-rounded, to have the patience to listen to and hear folks that might even have a perspective that's the polar opposite of yours, because you can have healthy discussions around that. You don't even have to agree at the end, but what it does is allows you to grow and mature in a way that you don't expect. And some of those conversations can be the most fun, even though you're not on the same page and you don't agree, but it really does give you some perspective on how to get things done, despite the fact that you may not approach the solution the same way as your counterpart or your colleague. And what I found over time is the mentoring relationships, of which I have quite a few. They ebb and flow depending upon time and circumstances, but you really can never have too many. And you really need people in your life that are going to say, stop doing what you're doing because you're being foolish, or as frank as that was pretty stupid. And I've had people in my life that would do that for me and say, look, you really do need to stop doing what you're doing, because it's not going to end up well for you or the people involved. And you need those honest, direct people in your life to coach you along, because you're never going to know everything that you need to know. Standout career experiences. Well, I got to tell you, when we broke ground on Fifth Third Field, I was in my mid-30s, and loved every minute of it, but was in over my head. And I, again, going back to the mentoring relationships, had wonderful people that really surrounded me with talented individuals to make the project go extremely well. We had excellent partners in the construction company, the Lucas County Commissioners, my colleagues at the Mud Hens, and Eric Ibsen, Neil Newcomb, long list of people, board members, Mike Miller, Dave Huey, that were terrific and part of the process. And then community leaders and business leaders that lended their expertise to making sure that the project went well. So that was definitely a standout experience, as was Huntington Center as well. Same scenario, good people working together, collaborating, bringing different tools in the toolbox to the conversations. The road could be rocky at times, very stressful. You're making more decisions than normally you can in a short period of time. So you really do have to rely on others for support and help along the way. And that was a critical lesson for me to learn at both of those junctures in my life. A question about culture. Culture in an organization. I can tell you why that's key in many respects. You really want to have a good understanding of what you're all about. And what I mean by that is really spend time on your personal perspective on what you bring to your life, to your family, and to the place you work. And of all of the organizations that I've had the pleasure of working at, I would say of the 5, 2 had terrific cultures. 3 did not. And what you find is if your perspective and outlook on life doesn't match up to the culture of the organization, you're in trouble. And it's going to be a hard place to go to work, because you're not synced up. So when I talk about that, and I talk about the Mud Hens and the Walleye, we have a team of people here that really look at things through the lens of our fans, our guests, and the folks that visit the Mud Hens and the Walleye in Hensville. So it's being steps ahead. It's building fans for life. It's making sure that fans come first. It's solving problems, anticipating problems, making the experience something that our fans and our guests enjoy. And when we hire people, they get it. And if they don't last very long. And it's so important for the organization and the company's culture to blend with your personal perspective and outlook, because again, if it doesn't, you're not going to be very successful. And oftentimes when we counsel people who are young in their careers, what we end up learning is that what their expectations are for work life do not sync up with the company that they're working for. And our advice there is, you know what? Go find a company that does sync up with your perspective and your philosophies, because they're out there. And then next thing you know, that person is now back on the fast track because they're working at a place where the culture does make sense and the culture fits their personality and allows them to grow and to grow successfully. That doesn't mean without mistakes, because that is one of the things that we encourage here, and that is, stretch, work hard, stretch. It's okay to make mistakes. And if you're going to make a mistake, we always tell people, make it a big noticeable one and come as close to catastrophe as you'd like, because we're going to be there to pick up the pieces and really help everyone grow from that experience. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, how does the organization empower employees to engage? Development of the company and out in the community. Great question. So what happens there is we're fortunate that many of the things we do align with community goals. So we're very youth focused on our community affairs, enabling kids and families to participate in everything from the arts and culture to sports. And we really work hard with the underprivileged to have access to opportunities that they may not otherwise have. And we work diligently with the community on that and other corporate leaders to try to bridge that gap. So it could be everything from, like I said, the sports to ballet to theater groups. We work with everyone, really trying to close the gaps to allow people to have experiences that enrich their lives. And that is very rewarding for our team members, our staff members, the players that participate in those activities. We all know about the wins and successes of the redevelopment of downtown. What has been the biggest failure? I don't know that we have a big failure, but we have a lot of little ones. And the little ones are as distressing as the big ones. I would say the most challenging, quote unquote, I wouldn't call it a failure, but disappointment, which will soon be on track, is when we look at Fifth Third Field, we went from 6 businesses within a 2 to 3 block radius to about 110. Now we look at Huntington Center and the numbers are much smaller. And I think what's going to happen with Huntington Center is once the 4 corners fall into place, and that's the intersection of Madison and St. Clair, I think we're going to see similar development around Huntington Center that we did see at Fifth Third Field. Now here's the interesting part. People think the success has been overnight. And what they fail to remember is that Fifth Third Field is 20 years old. Huntington Center is about 10, 11 years old. So we still have some runway there. And I think that is going to fall in place a lot faster now, again, because we have a collaborative effort working together to develop the streets in and around Huntington Center. Lucas County has made a major investment in the convention center, as has ProMedica. Ford Industry Square is coming to life with local serving retail, with residential and office space. So the Summit Street corridor is changing pretty rapidly, and that's only a block away from Huntington Center. So we think good things are going to happen in what we call the Central Business District. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the metro parks are investing $200 million on both sides of the river. That is going to be a major game changer for Toledo and the Toledo region. So again, going back to that biggest failure, I would say the timeline for Fifth Third Field was a lot faster than Huntington Center. And there were reasons for that. Again, people don't remember, we broke ground on Huntington Center during the Great Recession. Again, a testament to this community's long-term vision to invest in Huntington Center, despite the fact that we had the challenges of the Great Recession going on at that time. I don't know if I should pause here and maybe any questions that anyone might have, and then I could dive back into the rest of the questions I have here. There's still quite a few.
Yeah, we had a question in the chat about your role in planning the various experiences that happen at both Mud Hens and Walleye, or is that a whole, you kind of talked about that already a little bit about how there's a team behind that.
Well, I can touch upon that. So at Huntington Center, we manage all of the hockey related activities. So all of the special events and promotions related to Walleye hockey games. So, the teddy bear toss to the superhero nights, we have a team of people that put all of those activities together. And between the Mud Hens, Walleye, and Hensville, I think we have about 300 or so special events and activities and promotional activities over the 110 games or so that we put together. Steve Miller and ASM Global book all of the concerts at Huntington Center. And I think they're also involved in the concert series at Promenade Park. So Steve and his crew put together the concert schedules and the promotion of those activities and events. When we put together our special events and promotions, we do a lot of research. We do a lot of surveying. We ask the community the types of activities, events that they would like to participate and they would like to see happen more often. And the ones that tend to be the most popular are obviously the ones that we get great feedback on. And everything from the pet nights, the dog days at the ballpark, to the scout sleepovers, to the superhero nights, et cetera, that all comes from the research that we do and the feedback we receive from fans. Okay, what else we have here? What is the vision for the future of both organizations? Well, that's a timely question in a variety of different ways. So the success of the Mud Hens and the Walleye, the reason we're downtown is we wanted to see development within that 2 to 3, 4 block radius from each of the venues. And history and research shows that's what the expectation should be. About that 15-minute walk, 10 to 15-minute walk is where you're going to see development around sports venues. And we're going to see the same with the metro parks as well. Same with theater venues like the Valentine Theater or the Toledo Museum of Art or the main library. Any place that is an attraction that attracts large numbers, you see an opportunity for development. So as an anchor institution, we have to continue to do our job well, and that is attracting people to downtown to experience the Hens, the Walleye, and Hensville. And out of that, you get all the other economic developments. People who want to live downtown, people who want to work downtown, people who want to have fun downtown. All of that comes from us doing our jobs well. Between the two teams, we do, and Hensville, we probably do about 1 million visitors a year. And that really allows for the additional economic development to occur. The demand for residential has been extremely well received. So Ford Industry Square is adding apartments. We all know about the success of the development, the apartments on the east side, on the former site of the sports arena, adjacent to the Metro Park. That's doing extremely well. And there are other projects in the pipeline as well to meet the residential demand. I'll jump back to the questions here as people type in more in the sidebar here. What is Toledo's greatest untapped opportunity that it could leverage to attract residents? You know, there's a long list that I would say Toledo offers, and especially coming out of the experience, the COVID experience. So when you take a look at Toledo, and I mentioned this earlier, we have great neighborhoods. We have access to a river. We have access to a lake. We have, this is key, affordable housing. We have excellent schools, and we have an easy commute around our community. And to put that into perspective, for those of you that have left the community and have lived in places like Chicago or New York or Detroit, or any major metropolitan area of 2 million or more residents, what factors in is the cost of commuting. So I'll give you an example. I had a dear friends that still live in New York City. So Joe, we're all named Joe. So Joe tells me he spends $300 a month paying tolls on to go over the Verrazano Bridge, to use the Goethals Bridge, and just to commute to and from family affairs and work. $300 a month just in toll fees. Then on top of that, the hour a day to 90 minutes a day, if you get stuck in traffic, commuting back and forth to all of these things. So think about that from a 2 to 3 hour perspective of your each day that you're not spending either at work or with your family or with your friends. And I can tell you this, that over the last 25 years that I've been in Toledo, and Annette and I raising our children here, it's easy to go from work, go see their sporting events, go see their plays, go see their dances, go to all of the things that really allow you to have a fulfilling and enriching life you can have here. I could not have that in Chicago, could not have that in Detroit, and certainly couldn't have it in New York. That's not to say they're not great experiences, but if your perspective is to have a full career, an enriching career, and a wonderful family life, a place like Toledo is the place to do that in.
Hey, Joe, we had a question. I had someone text me and ask that you spoke about the role of mentorships and how you are able to act as a mentor. Could you speak to who has been a mentor to you and what role they've had for you in your career?
Yeah, well, so Mike Miller is the chair of our board, and he and I have known each other since the early 90s. Dave Huey is another one that's on the board. He used to run the block communication companies. Mike worked for Fifth Third Bank for many years and is the founder of Waterford Bank. John Stockwell, Shirley Timonaire, Laurie Johnston, who runs Paramount for ProMedica. Tom Walton used to be the editor of The Blade. Kurt Frank is a good friend that runs Blade Communications in town. These are folks that willingly give perspective and offer advice. And that's just a handful. I mean, if I really put pencil to paper, it's easily hundreds of people that have really made my life successful. My wife, Annette, is incredible. My kids are terrific. But my wife, far and away, has really given me the opportunity to be successful. And when I say that, a sounding board, one of those people had very comfortable saying, okay, now you're being stupid, and really giving perspective and balance to life. And I was fortunate enough to meet Annette here the first time I was with the Mud Hens. She's a Toledo native, and quite frankly has been the difference in my life.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Something less wonderful, something a little
Yeah.
less wonderful to talk about is COVID, right? How has COVID impacted the way y'all are operating, from
Yeah.
postponing games, and do you anticipate long-term changes?
So it affected us dramatically. When we first started managing through COVID, there was hopes that we would have an abridged mud hen season and a walleye season. Neither of those occurred. We had always had cash reserves in place for an emergency, and our emergency would be a player strike, damage to the buildings, to Fifth Third Field or Huntington Center that made them unplayable, reserves in place for recessionary periods, even a Great Recession. But we did not have, the thought in the back of our mind that we'd have to prepare for a pandemic. And what happened during the pandemic, that unfortunately it got to the point where we all took salary adjustments, and we did have to lay people off. We did bring quite a few people back. The nice thing about we really do have outstanding people. So what happened during the pandemic was some of our best and brightest did move on to other organizations, which we were very happy about that. So in the recovery, it really is a day-to-day process to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make for a safe environment for our fans, for our employees, for our team members. And that's a constant challenge. And I think everyone in town that goes to work or has responsibility for others feels it. And I can tell you, I thought the Great Recession was stressful. This has been a whole new learning curve. I don't know that I've had an experience in the past where we would have planned and managed so many things that we ended up not doing because the pandemic would throw us that many curves. So from we tell the younger staff members, well, as much as that's painful to plan something that you're never going to end up doing because you've just been thrown another wrench, or another wrench has been thrown into the works. The good thing about it is you learn to be adaptive. You learn to deal with the mental challenges of it and the physical challenges of it. But as you're doing it, it's not a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I think all of us all of us on this call have experienced varying degrees of that these last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to switch it back to something more fun to talk about than COVID. And so we just had our second Winterfest this past month. And I was hoping maybe, I know me and my friends had a great time at Winterfest. I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about all of that, about the development of it, the idea. One of the comments earlier said that friends in bigger cities were jealous that we got to have outdoor hockey. So how did that all come to be?
So we did the first Winterfest 7 years ago, and it took 3 years worth of planning, and we had a young member of our staff, a guy by the name of Mike Keedy, who expressed a passion for this project, and we set him on his way. And for 3 years, he worked on putting together the original Winterfest. So we said, okay, this went really well. We had, I think, close to 60,000 people come downtown for that first Winterfest. And we said, well, maybe we can do this every 5 years or so. We don't want to do it every year, because we want it to be fresh and fun. And every year might be too much of a task, even for the community participation, from the community participation perspective. So we had planned on Winterfest for last year, and obviously the pandemic hit. So we put the plans together for this, or continued the plans for this December. About 90 days ago, we would have, if you gave us the truth serum, we would have said we were nervous wrecks about it. Was this a good decision? Should we continue with it? And then, as we've learned many a time, this community responds in abundance. So we thought maybe we'd have 16,000 people come out to the 2 Walleye games. We ended up having 21,000 people show up. St. John's and St. Francis played an outdoor hockey game. They had a record attendance. Over 3,000 people showed up for that. Adrian College faced off against an opponent over the weekend. They had over 3,000 people show up. Youth hockey from multiple states traveling to Toledo. Open skates for people just to enjoy their families skating around the ice. So when we had our doubts, again, 3 months ago, and then what transpired were two different things. And again, I think it's a testament to this community that people here really do enjoy each other, their neighbors, their friends, and their colleagues. And you get to do that in a place like Toledo. In places like Chicago, Detroit, New York, it's a little bit more, there's a little more skepticism, a little more cynicism, a little bit more guarded in how you interact. But Midwestern communities, Midwestern culture speaks volumes about how people enjoy each other. Any other questions that have come up?
I have not seen one, unless
Okay.
I'm missing one.
Okay.
But what I was thinking about when you're talking about memorable experiences, about a month ago, we went to a hockey game with our 2 young boys, my husband and I, and we went with another couple who had 2 young boys. So it's 4 adults, 4 young children. And as would happen, one of the boys slipped and fell in the concourse at the Walleye, and he was bleeding. He was crying. He was bleeding. It was like a whole thing. He's about 6 years old. And I was so touched by one of the workers who was working one of the stands. We didn't even see her coming. She just showed up out of nowhere with some ice and some napkins, and then she walked away and then came back with some more provisions. And I just wonder if you could reflect a little bit. I've certainly had my kids fall and hurt themselves in other locations and not had, an employee come up and make sure everything was okay. I was so touched by that. If you could talk a little bit about how you build that. Yeah,
there's a local company that does work with the Fortune 100. It's called Root Learning, and they're based in Sylvania. And we had approached them about 15, 20 years ago, and said, we really want to create this, what we call a fanatical culture, really a fan comes first culture. And how do you treat everyone that visits with us as a guest in your home? And we were struggling with it. And we were saying, okay, we have 500 seasonal employees, team members. It's one thing to get your staff, your front office staff that you work with every day on board, but how do we do this with seasonal employees of a variety of different ages? And they put together what we call learning maps, and it's all about fan interaction and all of the touch points, and how it doesn't matter what happens to the guest. You just want to be the one that replaces that unexpected experience with something else that's positive. And we have we have ushers that, you know, will go and find a baseball to give to a kid that is upset or crying, or we've had people show up to games, believe it or not, on the wrong game date. You know, maybe their tickets are a week old or a week into the future, and the folks that work the box office just take care of it. There's no supervisor to check in with. You just deal with it, you take care of it, and you fix it. Someone walks away from a food station and drops their plate of food, replace it. It's simple. You know, treat people the way you would like to. Make sure that fans come first, that we're building fans for life, and being steps ahead and saying, you know what, before the person has to ask, engage, make them happy, really treat them like they're a guest in your home. And what we find is, you know, our team members embrace it and enjoy it and take pride in it.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. I know
Thank you.
at other sporting venues that isn't always the case. And so I think it's really shows the leadership that you all have had in the organization.
Thank you.
Tom Daniels, you're welcome. Tom Daniels is asking, he says he works at BGSU and they have a lot of students studying sports management. What recommendations do you have for them as they progress through their degrees, or if you have any general recommendations for college students?
Yeah. Oh, we've had a pipeline with BG now for 30 years. The BG students have been outstanding, and we have actually all of the area colleges, UT, BG, U of M, Adrian College. You know, the list goes on and on. There's within that 30-mile radius, and we have internships, we have seasonal employment, we have part-time employment, and we put the kids to work, and we pay them. That's another thing that we do with the internships, unlike some other organizations, help them bridge the gap on getting work experience while in college, but welcome all comers there. And the kids are terrific. What they lack in experience, they make up for in enthusiasm. So we are all about it. So they just need to come our way. They can contact me. I put people in the right, put them in direct them to the right resource.
Thank you. We have the questions are starting to come in here. Another question we have, what are some of the unexpected challenges as you've branched out from the baseball and the hockey? I'm thinking about like the restaurants.
Right. Yeah. So Hensville has the 2 restaurants and Hensville Park, where we would do the concert series, the outdoor shows. And the whole idea behind Hensville was to complete the street. That street, St. Clair Street, as I mentioned earlier, all the entrepreneurs kind of rolled up their sleeves, renovated the buildings. And unfortunately, there were actually 4 buildings adjacent to Fifth Third Field that were in really deplorable condition. The ones right on the corner of St. Clair and Washington, and then the one across the street beyond right field, that's St. Clair and Perry Street. So we said, what can we do that would complement Fifth Third Field, the Convention Center, and the rest of St. Clair Street? And that's where we came up with the Hensville Park concert series, the rooftop observation decks, and the restaurants. All of that was humming along until the recession. Until COVID. And what we decided to do there was we could remain in the restaurant business we could have during COVID, although sourcing the human resources was a critical issue. But then we looked at our neighbors and said, okay, these are sole proprietors, they're not chains, they're sole proprietors that do this to put food on their table, as opposed to Holy Toledo and Fleetwood's, which were complementary to a mud hens and walleye game. So what we did there was suspend operations because we thought it was in the best interest of the community. Those will come back as the community becomes more robust again, or I should say the visitors to downtown become more robust, and we can reactivate not only the restaurants, but Hensville Park for concerts and live entertainment.
Yeah, that was a difficult time for, I think, all restaurants,
Yep.
owner and operators. Here's another one we have come through. I love that you talked about how you work to ensure your employee communications around fan engagement had to be tailored to employees of all ages. How else have you adjusted in the past few years to ensure you're effectively engaging a multi-generational workforce, and what's worked and what's been some struggles?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier we're really a research-based organization that allows us to do the things that people want to see us do. So what we try to do is get as much information from everyone that has an interest in either working here or attending events and activities here. And then what we do then is we try to understand what they're trying to accomplish, what their end goal is. So it could be a visitor coming again with small children to a visitor that's coming with college age kids to colleagues that are coming out for a fun night out. And again, it runs the spectrum, and it runs across cultures. It runs across economic, socio-economic platforms and information. And what we try to do is really meet people and their expectations as best we can. I would say that the most challenging part of that is people do experience the world differently. And the most challenging part is trying to be not even trying to be, but being as empathetic as possible. And that's hard. People say they do it all the time. Not so much. I don't know if that, I hope that answered the question.
I think so. I think it did.
Yeah.
We've got one here about creating a more sensory friendly environment for individuals with disabilities. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, we've worked hand in glove with the Ability Center from day one on both Fifth Third Field and Huntington Center. So they were part of the design process for both facilities. And then what we do with anyone that has a special need is we try to accommodate people the way they need to be accommodated. So we wouldn't sit here and tell you we understand every aspect of that, but we are totally sensitive to it. And what we try to do is match that up as often as possible. So it could be someone on the autism spectrum that has sensory needs, to someone that has peanut allergies, to mental abilities, to physical abilities that need to be accommodated. And we try to really try to address that as best we can with anyone that brings those to our attention. If we're doing it deficiently, it's not because there's a purpose behind it, it's because we don't know any better.
Yeah, the Ability Center is really a jewel in our community.
Yes.
In terms of helping get our community to be as equitable as possible.
Yes.
We are running a little close on time here, so I thought maybe I'd invite you to answer a question you might want to, or share something you haven't yet talked about.
Well, usually when we have a group like this, the question that typically comes up is, what would you suggest I do as a young professional or a person that is participating in a program like Leadership Toledo? And it goes back to where we started. Oftentimes we'll ask ourselves, about our careers, our skill sets. And then what happens is people who are in our part of our lives that really want to help us start steering us in different directions. And what I would suggest to you is, you identify your skill sets, and then you ask yourself the question, what is it that I can do that can make a difference? What is it that I have a passion for and that I love? And that as a result of combining those things, you end up in a career that you love. And because you love it, you start doing all of the things necessary to be successful because you enjoy it. And oftentimes what happens is people will mismatch their skills with an industry that they don't have a desire to be in. And then 10, 15, 20 years go by and they're miserable. And we see that a lot. And we see a lot of people who try to recalibrate their careers down the road. And you can do that. But at that point, you typically have other responsibilities that also have to be weighed in. You might have a family, you might have a commitment to certain things that are not as easy to get out of, like a house payment and a car payment, and many of the things that become constraints. So what we try to do is encourage people. It sounds almost like an elevator pitch, but I can tell you that everyone here that's invested in, that we know of that have invested in careers that they have a passion for, again, they become really good at it. They end up in a place that they really enjoy. And that's a variety of different professions. We engage in with lawyers and attorneys, accountants, the service industry, a variety of things that we tend to have need to happen to make for a great experience. And typically what we find, the folks that are really well invested and love what they do are great partners that we work with. And same in this building. People that come to work here have a love affair with what they're trying to accomplish each day.
I mean, if we were going to end on any such thought, I feel like that's a pretty solid one to wrap up with.
Okay.
Joe, I just really want to thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge and your insight and your experiences with our people. I think as we could see in the engagement in the chat that everyone had a really great time. You're getting a lot of thank yous, and
yeah, thank you.
The BG crowd showed up. They were really excited when you were given the kudos to BG.
Well, we have a lot to be thankful for, and really it's it's interesting when people look at our quote unquote success. I think if you asked anyone that works here, they would tell you our success is really based in how we interact with others and the passion we have for people. And I know it sounds a little bit like an elevator pitch or rehearsed, but it's not. It really makes all the difference.
Totally agree. Everyone in the chat, there is a survey we would love for you to fill out and give us a little bit of feedback. There is also the sign up for our next presentation, which will be the first Thursday of February, and it'll be with Wendy Huntley from Connecting Kids to Meals. And I am just as excited for you all to hear from Wendy as I was for you all to hear from Joe today. So thank you everybody for joining us today and for all the great feedback and your participation in the chat. It makes for a richer experience when everybody is engaged. So I thank you for that.
Thanks.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.